I would like to welcome the Board of Finance, guests, members of the press. I see a quorum today, so I'll call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes of July the 11th, 2022. The minutes for this meeting has been distributed via email. And does anyone have any corrections or changes or additions that they would like to add or suggest to the minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion? Motion to approve. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The next item is a presentation of the Treasury Investment Performance Report by the Treasurer Milligan. Treasurer Milligan, you are recognized to present your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and great to be here today. Got a lot to cover, so I'll get right to it. Most of you are aware the U.S. economy continued to remain volatile throughout the fourth quarter of FY22. We saw positive job growth and low unemployment throughout the quarter, factors that normally signal optimism among investors. However, the negative geopolitical factors also remain: the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, as well as rising fuel, housing, and commodity prices that continue to disrupt global chain supplies. In an attempt to curb continued rising inflation, the Fed intensified its plan to raise interest rates, hiking rates by 50 basis points in May and another 75 in June. Rate hikes have had a positive effect on our portfolio, particularly with our short-term investments. Total earnings for our short-term portfolio were $4.1 million compared to just $659,000 during the same quarter 1 year ago. This portion of our portfolio is made up of commercial paper, demand and money market accounts, and is heavily dependent upon federal interest rate. Context: the last time our short-term portfolio was this high was during the third quarter of 2020, right before the Fed slashed rates to zero in response to COVID. Along the Fed's rate hikes have also affected our long-term portfolio, which is made up of mortgage-backed securities, agency bonds, U.S. Treasuries, and Israel bonds. This portion of our portfolio earned $20.6 million compared to $10.5 million in the same quarter 1 year ago. As Fed rates increased, so did rates for mortgages. Mortgage-backed securities are the leading investment type in our long-term portfolio. Interest rates increased during the fourth quarter, allowing us to reinvest principal in previously purchased securities at a higher yield. In context, I've included a chart showing the history of the 10-year Treasury rate, which is the main indicator for how the fixed income market that we operate in is performing. We actually saw the highest 10-year Treasury rate since 2011 during the fourth quarter of FY22. Moving on, our total revenue for the fourth quarter of FY22 earned $24.8 million compared to $11.1 million during the fourth quarter of FY21. Our target ROI that this board set for the fourth quarter was between 1 and 1.1%. Our total book return for the quarter was actually 1.332%. And speaks for itself. Our annual revenue for FY22 was $69.9 million, and that's roughly double the $35.4 million we earned in FY21. Brings the total amount received under my administration to almost $500 million. This brings me to a new slide that I feel is important to show you all moving forward. This chart shows the month-end portfolio balance in recent years. We have inflows and outflows daily, so this is simply meant to give you a general idea of our portfolio's balance and growth. When I first came into office, the portfolio was between $3 and $3.5 billion. It's grown between $6 and $7 billion, and with the influx of federal COVID relief monies during the past 2 years, recently hit $9 billion. What are some of the reasons for the growth of the portfolio? Well, certainly the federal relief monies have played a part. We've also had more money to invest. Sales tax revenues have increased substantially over the last few years, and investment receipts during my administration have increased dramatically. All these factors have contributed to the growth of the portfolio. Where are we investing this money? Well, the next slide is a brief snapshot of our portfolio allocation. As of June 30, the end of the fourth quarter and fiscal year, you'll see the percentages of our portfolio broken down by the various investment categories that we participate in. And take note of that. I'd like to take a minute now to discuss to you an issue that came up during the quarter, and according to Treasury investment policy, which you should have before you, our internal controls policy, page 5, requires us to use a third-party custodian to serve as a safekeeper between my office and the investment firms we do business with. So for the past 6 years, we've used Bank of America Merrill Lynch for this role. Unfortunately, they notified us that they're dissolving their custodial division and will cease operations by November 30th. Immediately upon receipt of this notification, we began discussing our operations to hire a new custodian. Since we're a constitutional office, we aren't required to go through an RFP process. However, on my instruction, I felt like it was our due diligence to do so, to provide the utmost transparency and to have multiple financial institutions to consider. We've been working with the Department of Transformation and Shared Services, Office of Procurement through the RFP process. We had 6 prospective vendors respond and are currently evaluating them along with the Chief of Procurement. We plan to have a new custodian in place prior to our term with Bank of America ends. Time is of the essence. As we look to the next quarter, our focus continues to be safety, liquidity, and finally return. This sound leadership of my investment team and increase in investment returns and the state's growing economy, we've doubled the size of the portfolio during my administration. We've been able to receive almost $500 million back to the state from our investment returns, which amounts to real money being put into the state's coffers that helps finance important endeavors such as the state's highway and the catastrophic reserve fund. I do want you all to know that I take my responsibility in securing the safety and stability of our portfolio very seriously. I intend to keep that focus until my very last day in office. We've set up the state's investment portfolio to ensure long-term reliability and create a foundation that future treasurers will be able to depend on in years to come. At this time, Mr. Chairman, I'll open the floor to any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. Are there any questions? Hearing none, then I would need a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
Warren, I'll make a motion to accept the report.
Thank you. All those in favor say
Aye.
aye. Any opposed?
Yeah, so you're
Thank
getting
you.
it.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Okay, the next item are the quarterly motions for the second quarter of fiscal year 23. That's October the 1st of 2022 through December the 31st of 2022. These motions were included in the documents distributed by email to the board. As chairman of the board of the, as chairman of the State Board of Finance, I make a motion to the board that no funds are available for deposit into the State Board of Finance Certificate of Deposit. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. As chairman of the State Board of Finance, I make a motion the board direct the treasurer of the state to purchase warrants for the succeeding quarter, as October the 1st, 2022 through December the 31st of 2022, pursuant to Act 1088 of 2013, and to keep reasonable amounts in demand deposit accounts and money markets during the next quarter for the transaction of day-to-day activities. May I have a second, please? Second. Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The next item is the total rate of return for the report from the fourth quarter of 2022. That's April fiscal year 22. That's April the 1st of 2022 through June the 30th. 2022. I recognize Stephen Kilgore, Treasury Deputy, Treasurer, Director of Investment Accounting. Thank you. Mr. Kilgore.
Annual book return on investment, or ROI, for fiscal year 2022 was 0.974%. In terms of monthly results, we started the fiscal year at 0.705%. That's been above 1% ROI as an annualized monthly yield in February 2022. ROI for the fourth quarter was 1.332%. Total return, which includes market value changes in addition to the coupon earnings and amortization within book return, is negative 6.438% this last fiscal year. This figure won't make an impact on the state's portfolio unless we were to divest all of our holdings, which we are. As interest rates go up, bond prices go down. As long as we're holding to maturity, which we are, this number is not really a concern. The largest amounts of investment income continue to come from mortgage-backed securities, which had a weighting of approximately 51% of the portfolio, but produced 63% of net investment income. Commercial paper was second in weighting at about 16% of the portfolio, while producing 14% of the net investment income for the quarter. Money market funds as a group are providing an annualized yield of over 1% for the first time this fiscal year due to federal interest rate increases, as mentioned earlier by the Treasury. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board? Now here, does somebody want to ask a question? Okay, hearing none, then for the recommendation for the first quarter of fiscal year 23, that's July the 1st, 2022 through September the 30th, I recognize Robert Romanek, Treasury Senior Investment Manager. I've been practicing.
Good morning, Mr. Treasurer. Good morning, members of the board. With your consent, I will be setting the new target rate book return value for the first quarter of 2024. The path of interest rates has been difficult to predict given the competing forces of runaway inflation not seen since the early 1980s and the expectation of slow. Rising recession fears recently supported by consecutive declines in GDP in the first 2 quarters of this year sent yields from 2 years to 3 years plummeting since reaching their peak on June 14th. Fed fund futures are predicting 4 more interest rate hikes for 2022. representing an additional 1% increase in an upper bound terminal rate of 3.5%. Fed members continue to communicate the need for higher short-term interest rates until inflation begins to decline back toward their 2% comfort zone. This should create a foundation for higher rates over the next several months. We therefore are proposing to increase target rate of book return value for July through September period from a range of 1% to 1.1% to a new range of 1.7% to 1.8%.
That concludes your report. Are there any questions? Got a quiet board now. I need a motion to set the target rate of return, book rate of return for July through September quarterly period from a range of 1 to 1.1 to a new range of 1.7 to 1.8. May I have that? Someone make that motion, please. Second.
Second.
Are there any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The next item is the presentation of Treasury Internal Audit Department. For this presentation, I once again recognize Treasurer Milligan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some of you may recall that shortly after my re-election in 2019, that I had asked and received permission from this board to hire an independent review panel to study my investment department, procedures, practices, investment strategy, and give feedback about our operations and how we might improve them. They were very thorough and offered great advice and recommendations for me to consider. I have implemented many of their suggestions, but today I would like to focus on one of the recommendations they made, and that is the establishment of an investment accounting department. Finally, they advise that the individuals making the investments shouldn't also be the ones calculating and reporting the results of those investments. Couldn't agree more. Part of that, of the legacy that I want to leave for this office is to have transformed it to where it operates the most professional, in the most professional and transparent manner possible. I want to blot out the stain that the previously elected treasurer put on this office. One of the final efforts I can take to not only lead that legacy, but also keep our promise of the transparency to the taxpayers is what I would like to discuss with you now. And that's the creation of the Investment Accounting and Auditing Department. This department will be staffed with 2 members of my team, which was able to realign my office's budget FY21. The director is Stephen Kilgore, we've heard from, who this board has now heard from regularly. Stephen is a CPA, is nearing the Chartered Financial Analyst certification, and has decades of experience in state government, analyzing and auditing insurance companies. The other staff member is Holly Beaver, who has over 20 years of experience in government and private sector accounting, and is working on her certified internal audit designation. I'm excited to report this team has just completed their 2nd year managing the accounting for the investments of the office. In their 1st year working extensively with legislative audit and departmental audits, as well as assisting with our year-end reports to DF&A for the inclusion in the annual comprehensive financial report. One final step I've taken to professionalize the office and protect the citizens. During my time in office and with the board's help, we've been able to maintain 2 senior investment managers dividing investment responsibility and rotating their duties on a regular basis. We've also added additional checks and balances between the investment team and our cash management department. We've implemented advanced accounting software and technologies, and we continually update our website to provide the most current investment reports to the public, which was one of the promises I made. Last year, I directed my chief deputy treasurer, Stephen and Holly, to prepare them to take on an additional role as an audit team for FY '23. I asked them to study the plans of internal auditors from various boards I sit on, like APERS, Teacher Retirement, and ADFA. As chairman, members of the board, when I came into office, the investment portfolio of the state was roughly $3.5 billion. It's now grown between somewhere $6 and $7 billion. And because of the influx of federal COVID relief funds, as I mentioned earlier, nearly reached $9 billion. When you're talking about that much money, public funds, I don't think that you can be too careful having too many hours. As I said before, safeguarding the taxpayers' money that I'm entrusted with is a promise I made to Arkansans when they elected me, and that's one promise I intend to fulfill. My goal has always been to implement policies and procedures that future office holders and the State Board of Finance will rely on even after my time in public service is through. This is something I'm immensely proud of and hope you will see the value in it. Today, with the chairman's permission, I would like Stephen to come forward and present to you our audit plan for fiscal 2020. Thank you.
Stephen?
Good morning again. As it's been stated, I'm Stephen Kilgore, Director of Accounting and Auditing for the Treasurer of State's Office, and today I'm presenting the Arkansas Treasurer of State Internal Audit Plan for fiscal year 2023. There's a more detailed document which can be found in your board packet and on the Treasury website that describes the audit steps and anticipated hours for each step. Today, I want to share the basic approach being used and key points of emphasis within the plan. The objective of internal auditing is twofold: to assist management and to support stakeholders at all levels. In addition, we hope to assist the State Board of Finance in the effective discharge of its responsibilities by furnishing analysis, appraisals, and recommendations concerning the investment activities of the agency. This objective is accomplished by ensuring four things: compliance with applicable laws and regulation, reliability and integrity of financial and operational information, safeguarding of assets, and effectiveness and efficiency of operations. We want to give an overview today of the concepts that guided us in the development of this plan. It started by taking a risk-focused approach. Audit steps were selected with consideration of three priorities: the level of inherent risk within a process, the control environment associated with that process, and the remaining vehicle risk. We are applying a time-sensitive audit cycle. Given the importance of reporting distributions made to agencies, assessments of key processes are designed to take place primarily on a quarterly basis prior to monthly distributions being made to agencies, prior to monthly, quarterly, or annual reporting to key stakeholders. We are addressing statutory compliance. Resources and regular attention will be devoted to ensuring that compliance with applicable statutes, rules, and policies is being achieved. We're assessing operational effectiveness in key areas. Internal audit staff will seek to add value by assessing the effectiveness of investment policies and processes and provide feedback for future plans. What do we see as the primary role of internal audit? Where do we fit in? Some years ago, a model was developed by the Institute of Internal Auditors to describe the most effective placement for internal auditing in a complex or multi-layered organization. These roles are referred to as the lines of defense. What is shown now is the slide included on page 4 of the audit plan. I take a moment to consider how each role in the investment process fits within the model. First line roles provide for delivery of products and services to clients, the end beneficiaries of the activity or the organization. In the Treasury, first line roles are filled by the investment managers. Second line roles focus on ensuring that objectives of performance, risk management, compliance, control, and quality assurance are achieved. In our office, these roles are filled by the senior investment managers in coordination with the executive team. Third line roles. This is where the audit department comes in. Internal audit activities provide independent and objective assurance to the executive team, the State Board of Finance, as to how well goals are being achieved and how internal controls or processes might be improved. The Treasury, those roles fall to myself and Ms. Holly B. So you might ask, what are the key steps, points of emphasis within the audit plan? Review of investment procedures, we identified 5 key steps as most likely to benefit from internal audit attention. Risk levels were assessed and continue to be updated based on routine observation as well as discussion of the processes between staff members and legislative audit. Some of the planned audit procedures have periodically been applied by Ms. Beaver and myself within the prior fiscal year. Planned audit areas for fiscal year 2023 include broker allocation and trade execution. How many brokerage firms are used? Are they all on the approved list? Are multiple bids obtained? Secondly, investment pricing and valuation assessment. What independent service is being used to value the securities? Is their pricing regularly updated and reasonable for each type of bond as compared to other pricing sources? Investment policy and statutory compliance. Are the amounts by category within the approved percentages by both type of bond and ratings level? Investment performance variance analysis. Are the causes for unusual investment results obvious based on market trends? Would it be helpful to analyze pre-trade notes or prior year investment strategies? Return on investment calculations and methodology. Was the return on investment properly calculated? Are any accounting method discrepancies apparent? An estimate of hours for each audit step are included in the executive summary, which can be found again on the Treasury website and within your reports packet. Additional reference materials on investment accounting audit plans are to be received and considered later this year. These consist of multiple continuing education certifications we are pursuing. Upcoming activities include a conference on auditing investments and self-study plans on governmental accounting and financial management, investment accounting, and internal audit. Therefore, the number and types of audits may be expanded. We welcome feedback on these stated goals and plans or on additional concerns you may have. Thanks for your consideration.
Excuse me, thank you, Mr. Joel. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Auditor Lee, please ask your question.
Well, it's an observation. I think this looks excellent, and I'm looking forward to seeing the reports. Of course, I won't be around much longer, so I'll probably only see one of them. I commend the treasurer and his staff for creating an internal audit process like this. Reading through the objectives, and I would agree about the hours spent too. I think this looks excellent, and as a Board of Finance member, I look forward to seeing, like I said, these reports. Well, anyway, I have a lot of other thoughts, but anyway, I can almost see this being. It's always interesting to have an internal audit happening in your office that needs to be separated a little bit from the investment team. You need to make sure of that, which it appears you have. Anyway, those are my thoughts. So I guess I didn't have a question. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you for your expressing your opinion and your thoughts on this important new role that has been established. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I'd like to have a motion to accept the treasurer's report on this matter.
Campbell McLaurin, I'll make the motion to accept the report.
A second, please.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We've done the quarterly motions, and every year we also have a series of annual motions that I would like to bring to the attention of the board for their approval. I make a motion to approve the record-keeping systems of the Treasury of the State with the accounts recorded using the cash basis of accounting for daily transactions. Adjusting entries shall be made at each fiscal year end to properly report the operating results of the Treasurer of the State on the accrual basis of accounting to comply with generally accepted accounting principles. That's my motion. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Are there any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I make a motion to approve the record keeping and reporting requirements of the Treasury of the State to include at a minimum the following reports: ledger balance and activity, that's on a daily and monthly basis; fund transactions by type, daily and fiscal year to date; checks charge off detail by line item, daily and fiscal year to date; safekeeping inventory daily; trust fund certificates of deposit daily; collateral sufficiency daily; demand account balances daily; money market balances daily and monthly; return on investment monthly and year to date, fiscal year to date. That's my motion. May I have a second, please? Second. Okay. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, you have an attachment A, and I make a motion to approve the current collateralization policy of the Treasury of the State, and that's again attachment A. May I have a second?
Second.
And we have a submission. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Make a motion to approve the Code of Ethics for the members of the Board of Finance and the Code of Ethics and criminal background checks for the current employees of the Treasury of the State. Those are attachments B and C. May I have a second to that motion?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I would like for the members of the board who are not here in person, if they would sign those forms and return those to Alderman Sampson. Okay. The next item is the Chief Compliance Officer report, and I recognize Alderman Sampson to give her report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So today I wanted to do a little something different than I had been doing. I wanted to give an overview of kind of what I look at monthly, daily actually, I wanted to show you guys what that is, you know, the spreadsheet and things that we use that I do for compliance. I'm not going to go too in depth because of the heavy agenda. I realize that we've got a lot still to go. Stacey, if you'll pick it first. So this was built by the investment team several years ago. Damon Dortch really was the key player to set this spreadsheet up. And it's honestly not something that we learned that if you're going to comply with the policy, the investment policy and the percentages, you can't just go and buy something off the shelf, a software system. So we knew we were going to have to put something together to make sure we were always in compliance. So it's got a lot of moving parts. And like I said, I realized this is a lot to digest. I just want to kind of go over briefly, because it does have many moving parts. So on this sheet, you'll see that arrow number 1 is the Treasury general balance. So that is where we start. This changes every day due to warrants going out and deposits being made. So your number for compliance will change every day. So you have to audit this specifically to the date, or, it won't make sense. So right under that is the 30% calculation. So that would tell the investment department that's the max they can do on the commercial paper that day. So number 2 is the 5% limit per name limit. So that tells them of that 30%, each name can take that much. So the names are right over here on the right-hand side. You can see the ticker, current balance, and the room it has. And so it specifically even tells you how much room. Then on number 3, this actually calculates in real time. So this is going to, as they're purchasing the commercial paper that day, it's going to tell them how much they have left to purchase. On the bottom left-hand side here, you can see that those are the pieces of commercial paper that they bought that day, that MC fund. So that is actually taking away from that number as they're trading so that they know the number. Then it also calculates on number 4, the in real time, the A2P2 balances and the rule of that. Then the biggest takeaway, I think, for us, and this is not for the investment team, and Damon knows this, is that the ledger at the top, big circle, that's the ledger balance at the end of the day. Well, our table should balance that. Basically, that's saying our investments portfolio balances to the ledger. If that is ever out of balance, we stop everything. I mean, they stop and we try to figure out if it's on the ledger side, in the cash division, or if it's in the investment side, if something's been wrong. Does anybody have any, I know it's a lot to just, but does anybody have any specific questions to that? It's been a great tool for the investment division. Okay, so then sheet number 2, Stacey. So this is what we get at the end of the day that shows us every transaction that's been done for the day. And so it's really easy for us to look at the fund, the quantity of the commercial paper bought, or even like where the second arrow is, that's a mortgage that has been bought. It's got the CUSIP, so that if we needed to look up, I needed to look it up on the Bloomberg, I have the CUSIP number and everything on that. Then slide 3. This is also something that's emailed out every day, that you can see the balances in every security type. This is the general ledger, basically. It shows us that every security type, and then it also tells you the percentage of each. So I just circled that first one because that's the commercial paper. So on that day, which was the end of May, we had right at 20% in commercial paper. So that's just a really good thing to glance at and know that everything's, the rules are working, that's working. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of information and I will be happy to go in more detail, but I do realize that there's a heavy agenda today. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Are there any questions? Thank you. Do I have a motion to accept Alderman Sanson's report? Motion. A motion, I guess, motion is a second? Second? Second. All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. The next item on the agenda is employee benefits division and employees. The first thing we're going to take up is the employee assistance program request proposal. And to discuss this, I recognize Jay Bleed, EVP Administrator. Bleed.
Good morning, thank you. We have 3 items for the approval of the Board of Finance, recommended for approval by the advisory commissions of the Arkansas State and Public School employees And then we also have a couple different items that we can discuss and present for the information of the board, time permitting, I understand. It's been a long agenda. So the first two items are contracts. Under the law, we are required to bring these through the Board of Finance. There are two requests for proposals which we would like to issue with the approval of the board. The first is for an employee assistance program, or EAP. This is a program which we offer to state and public school employees to provide counseling and assistance for employees who might be struggling with some of the challenges in life, some of the issues that they've got going on, and which may creep into their work for the state and the workplace. The role of the EAP, and this is very typical for large employers to provide these services, is to provide counseling for folks, to provide training for people who might be working in very high stress situations, and to also provide employers an option for dealing with employees who might be struggling at the office that is other than disciplinary. So if you think about people who might come to work occasionally with some of the problems at home, and those problems are affecting their performance at the job, as an employer, we found that you can have a benefit by having some other option than simply writing somebody up or disciplining them. We have a current contract right now, which is about $1 million a year. We pay a certain amount for the option for folks to utilize these services. However, we have very low utilization. There's also a lot of variation across the country for large employers as far as what an EAP program looks like. So with that in mind, we would like to pursue an RFP, which changes our current process to allow a number of things. First being, we would allow virtual visits as opposed to in-person. We would also allow for pricing based on utilization. And then also, we would like to use some of the flexibility in the state procurement process to really open the door and ask for proposals from vendors on what they think is best for us. There's really a lot of opportunity out there, and we want to take advantage of that as much as possible. With that, I can stop and ask for questions, or we can move forward on the other.
Do any of the board members have any questions?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Are these going to require motions from us?
Yes,
Okay. Are we doing them separately?
yes.
Okay. Do you need a motion for this one now?
If there aren't any questions, I have one question. Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and make your motion?
My motion would be to approve for Mr. Bleed and his staff to put out an RFP.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. Jake, the only question I would have is, this applies to both the state employees and teachers.
Yes.
Not to retirees.
Correct. It would be active employees.
Active employees, okay. Are there any other questions?
So the assumption is once we're retired, we're relaxed?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
You'll be finding out soon, right? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The next item is the actuarial request for proposal. Jake, you're recognized.
So similar to the employee assistance program, this would be an RFP, which we would write for our actuary. We rely on an actuary as part of our program as a large employer, a large insurance plan. Our actuarial firm works very closely with us in developing monthly and quarterly and annual reports. They have worked very closely with us also in a consulting role. The work that we've done recently to change, for example, our premium structure, how we calculate claims costs, and how we spread those costs across the membership, all came working very closely with the actuarial firm that we currently have, Milliman. The contract would be to continue or to extend those services going forward through an RFP process. Both the EAP and the actuarial contract were bundled under the previous contract through Health Advantage. So one of the reasons we're putting this out for an RFP is so that we can have a direct contractual relationship with whichever vendor wins those. One other comment on the actuarial RFP. we have a new statutory obligation as a plan pursuant to legislation adopted earlier this year to provide a fiscal impact on any bills which affect EBD. So we would like to include in our actuarial contract an obligation for our actuary to help as an exclusive provider for EBD to assist in calculating those impacts. As bills are filed, they'll be able to help us sit down and figure out, okay, what's the impact going to be on the plan?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
So did I hear you say correctly? I was reading and listening at the same time. It was you're going to include in the RFP that they will be analyzing all bills that are coming through the legislature.
Correct. So one of the acts that was adopted earlier this year required that bills dealing with EBD or which would have a fiscal impact on EBD be handled in a lot the same way that retirement bills are currently handled. There will be a window for them to be filed. There will be a window for an actuarial analysis and a fiscal impact to be applied to them, and that there are limits on how those bills can advance if they don't have that fiscal impact.
I think excellent idea.
Any other questions? Okay. May I have a motion to approve moving forward with this request for proposal? Motion. Thank you. Second? Got a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the next item is formulary recommendation report. And again, I recognize Jake Lee.
So these reports have come before the Board of Finance in the past. These are a result of our relationship with the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences College of Pharmacy. We have a memorandum of understanding with the College of Pharmacy to help us manage our formulary. Formulary is the kind of fancy word for the list of drugs that we choose to cover under the plan. And formulary management is something that we do somewhat unusually in the state. Normally, large employers would delegate the formulary management responsibility out to the pharmacy benefit manager. Here in Arkansas, we choose to do that instead through the College of Pharmacy and through the process of the Board of Finance as well as ALC now. The reason we choose to do that is because the decisions we make on the drugs we cover have a direct and in some cases a significant fiscal impact on the plan. And this is for two reasons. First, the pharmaceutical industry is very creative and very active in coming up with new and very expensive drugs to treat various conditions and problems. If we choose to cover all those drugs, obviously that's going to increase the cost in the plan. So we need to make those decisions very carefully. The other is that manufacturers tie significant amounts of rebates to the drugs that we cover, so that if we choose to cover or not cover a drug, then that will tie into the amount of rebates we bring in. So traditionally, we've worked with the College of Pharmacy, their P&T commission, to develop a list like which is what you have before you, which is a series of drugs that have either come onto the market in the last few months or for which there is new information that has caused us to reevaluate our coverage decisions. We went over these drugs in detail with the board, the advisory commissions. You can see there the names of the drug, a brief kind of limited description, as well as a projection of the impact. All of these drugs have very little or no impact known at this time. But pursuant to state law, these do come through the Board of Finance. And then we'll go on to the Arkansas Legislative Council at the end of the month.
Thank you, Jake. Does anyone have any questions with regard to the formulary? Hearing none, I'll take a motion for the acceptance of this report.
Motion.
Have a motion, can I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Is there any other business to come before the Board of Finance today? Seeing no other business to come before the Board of Finance today, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you.